This is the audio review for Chapter 3, Research Tools in the Sport Marketing class. Sport marketing research. Research is formally defined as the systematic process of collecting, analyzing, and reporting information to enhance decision making throughout the strategic sport marketing process. What exactly does this mean? Think about it. A systematic process. We're going to do a protocol. We're going to set up a process where we collect, analyze, or import information. We do it the same way. We do it methodically. We find places to gather information. We do it strategically. What information do we need to know? Where do we need to find it? One thing that we're going to learn is we're not going to get every piece of information that we're going to need. All the data points are continually moving. The economy goes up and down, unemployment goes up and down, our competition decides to do something, the calendar changes, the weather changes. So collecting the information and the data through the research method allows us to formalize, find as much information as we can, knowing that we're not going to be able to guarantee all of our decisions, but the more information we collect and gather, the better we analyze it, the better we report it, the better position strategically our organization will be in. And when you start thinking about your strategic management class, this is really a basis of it. If we can make better decisions than our competition, our organization is going to be in better position to make more profits, get more participants, to accomplish our goals much better. The fundamental tool for understanding and ultimately satisfying customers' needs. We looked at that a few slides ago. How do we find out our customer needs? We ask them. We find out. This is how we find out. And keep in mind, if we ask people questions and get answers from them, not often are we getting the true answers. Oftentimes we may give answers that we think the test taker would want, or something that is less embarrassing to us than the absolute truth. We can provide information on demographics, giving decision makers well needed information to identify marketing opportunities, threats, segmenting markets, choosing and understanding characteristics of target audience. It helps us make better decisions. When we think about a simple SWOT analysis, the better our information in deciding what our strengths and weaknesses are. And again, that's internal to our organization. Or the opportunities and threats. Those are things outside our organization, means the better our decisions will be. What is the role of market research? What does the organization want to know? What is the best way to find it out? And best is a vague term. It could be easiest, it could be most comprehensive, it could be most effective, it could be most efficient. So we need to find out what that best is. And then how can we use it? The challenge of the research. We're going to have challenges collecting the data. We may have challenges based on the amount of time that we have to collect it, human resource ability. We may not have enough people dedicated to collecting research. We may just have one person. We may not have anybody. We may have problems with timeliness. We may have a decision that's due this afternoon, and we don't have a lot of time to collect a lot of data. We may not have a lot of money. We may want to do a research program where we're collecting information from thousands of people, but we may not have the monetary resources to do that. We may have challenges of analyzing the data. Some of our data may be conflicting. We may look at one piece of data and suggest the economy is not good, and another piece, maybe it is good. We look at one, maybe there's an opportunity there, to another piece of data saying we may not be able to reach it effectively. The more information we get, the better we analyze it, the better and more confident we can do in collecting the information and making our decisions. Collecting research allows managers to make better decisions. And we use market research in all phases. We don't just use it at the front end to decide what kind of target market we get. We use it in the implementation stage. We look at the research to find out, is the plan actually connecting to the target audience? Did we select the correct target audience to begin with, or now has it changed? So we look at market research, and it's relevant at every stage along the strategic marketing process. What is the market research process that we're going to do? We're going to look at these different steps. First, we need to select and define our problem or our opportunity. We need to know what we need to collect information on. Then we need to choose a research design type, choose a data collection method, work on the data collection form, choose a sampling technique, and actually collect the data, then analyze it, then prepare a report. As we can see during this process, it is very scientific. We're doing the marketing is science aspect here. We'll get to the sport marketing is art much later in the semester. This is the science aspect to it. First step in that process, defining the problem or opportunity. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you get there? Problem definition requires us to specifically define what information is needed, or at least specifically define what information do we not have. What do we need to know? Then we come up with our objectives. Table 3.1 in your textbook really shows some of this information. What objective, what do we need to answer? What information does the organization want and why? Meaning, if we can understand the thought process of the decision makers, perhaps they're not formally describing what they want correctly. If they're looking for information about a specific target market and they're defining it maybe solely in a demographic point of view, we may be missing a lot of very important information in a psychographic aspect. In other words, we may be understanding only the demographics, the age, the gender, the location where the target market is. We may not understand the motivations that they would have to consume our sport product. We also want to know the expectations in terms of the timeline and the costs. We want to know exactly when this project is due and how much money we have to collect the information. If it's due this afternoon, obviously we don't have a lot of time and the ability to collect a lot of information. We probably don't have enough time to go and ask people questions. We have to go to the internet and do a secondary source. If we have a longer amount of time and we have a lot of money, then we can do some primary objective collections. We need to write the marketing proposal. It's a written blueprint that describes everything that we talked about, the background of the study, the research objectives, the methodology, the time frame, the cost estimates. This research proposal allows us to formally state, perhaps in a contract form, to the decision makers, this is exactly that we understand. This is what you want us to do. This is the information you want us to collect. This is time we have. This is the cost. If you look at it in terms of a contract, if this was a separate market research agency collecting this information for a client, you'd want to lay this all out so you really understand exactly what's expected of you. A lot of this could also be connected back to the idea of the SMART objective so that everyone is on board. You have no surprises. You have no vague terms. Everyone understands what the accomplishments of the goals will be. Once we understand what we want to accomplish, we have to figure out what research design, what framework do we want to use? Is it an exploratory research, meaning we may not know exactly what's wrong? For instance, the question could be very vague. Why are ticket sales down? Could be a lot of reasons for this. Maybe people are upset with the local owner. Maybe the weather was extremely poor. Maybe the economy was down. Maybe we had a new competition. Maybe there was a great summer movie season. Maybe people didn't like the food. Maybe the bathrooms weren't clean. Maybe the stadium is in disrepair. Maybe the previous years we had a star player and this year that player's injured. Maybe the team isn't good. So we don't know why ticket sales are down. We're actually collecting information to find out what the question is. If we find out that it has to do with merchandising concessions, people don't like going to the game, they'd rather go out to eat because the food isn't good, then our follow-up research would be what type of food do they want? A descriptive design is more clearly defined. These are the ones that we may use after an exploratory if we need to. Find out the who, what, where, when, how often. Some of these descriptive designs could be causal, where we have a dependent variable and an independent variable. Maybe more of an experiment is a causal design. If we lower our prices in this section of the stadia, how much of an increase, if any, will occur in our attendance. If we decide to have more promotions, if we have more day games or night games or whatever we would want to do in terms of the independent variable that we change and manipulate, how does that impact the dependent variable? In this case, it could be why ticket sales are down or why we can increase sales of t-shirts or hot dogs or get more people to ski at our resort. We look at the data collection techniques. Secondary data. Data is collected for other purposes. Typically, secondary data is cheaper or even free, but it needs to be analyzed because we're not quite sure that it's what we need. Collecting as much secondary data is important because it's very easy to do oftentimes. However, we need to analyze it because it may not tell us exactly what we want to know. For instance, we may have a question that why did we do people like our hot dogs? We may be a concessionaire and we need to decide whether we want to get a new hot dog or continue the hot dog we have in an effort to sell more hot dogs. Do people like the hot dogs? We don't have enough time to go actually and ask them. So we look at some secondary data. One could be internal. We can go to sales data from the year before. How many hot dogs did we sell? And maybe we compare it to the year before and 2 years. Maybe we do a 5-year study and see our hot dog sales. Maybe we've seen it increase last year. Does that tell us that people like hot dogs? It gives us a better indication. Without that information, we don't know anything, but maybe it doesn't answer our question completely. Maybe we had more home games last year. Maybe our season was better. Maybe we had more attendance. Maybe our hot dog sale went up 10%, yet our attendance went up 25%. So we need to collect a lot of secondary data in order to really understand it. If we looked at an increase of 10% for hot dog sales, we can assume that they like the hot dogs. If it went up 25%, we're actually selling less hot dogs per person than we did the year before. Does that suggest that people like our hot dogs more? No. But the more information we collect, and internal, we can get merchandise, attendance figures, complaint calls. Internal data, we walk down the hallway and collect information that we already have. It doesn't answer our research question. It doesn't answer, do people like our hot dogs? But it gives us more information. We can look at governmental reports, and you're going to be using a lot of these, hopefully, in your case studies. Census data, Chamber of Commerce information, college admission data. If we want to know the population at SUNY Cortland or wherever we are, we can collect that information through a different website. Sport marketing information studies like the ESPN Sports Bowl or Sport Business Research Network. The SBR network is available on your database through your library portal. We look at trade associations. The Sporting Goods Manufacturer Association is a tremendous resource to find out participation information. How many people run in New York State? How many people bike? How many people ski? That Sport Goods Manufacturer Association collects all that information. So we can make decisions. If we're a sporting good manufacturer, we want to know what type of sporting goods we want to make in the next year. We have a limited capacity in our manufacturing plant and in our warehouse and on our human resources. So we want to pick the best sporting goods that fits the market that we're going to be in. We can go to the Sporting Goods Manufacturer Association and find out how many people are participating. We can look at the last few years and see, is it trending upwards? Is it going downwards? Is this something we need to invest? Primary data collection, data collected specifically to answer our question. We can do some different things, and here's a couple of techniques. Interviews, where we sit down and talk to somebody, ask them specific questions. That could be more of a qualitative research where you're finding out information. Do you like the hot dogs? Yes or no? No. Well, why not? And then maybe we explore it qualitative where we're getting word and verbiage information. We can do a focus group where we put 8 to 10 people in an area and we have a moderator and we start asking questions. Again, qualitative, because we're getting information, we're discussing things, we're able to ask follow-up questions. Whereas surveys and descriptive and questionnaires, they're quantitative. They're the ones that we look at a Likert scale, on a scale of 1 to 5. How do you feel about the hot dogs? We get a lot of information there, but we can't follow up very easily and ask specific questions. We can look at, when we do this quantitative information, a snapshot. A snapshot is the individual data collection at that point. A snapshot. At this point in time, what do our target audience feel about this issue? If we ask the question over and over and over, maybe we trend the last 10 years, now we're looking at a longitudinal study. We're able to look at trends. Are more people skiing? Are less people skiing? And then the experiment that we looked before, one or two variables are independent while others are held constant or dependent, and see how they adjust to it. So different types of primary data collection. We can do personal observation. Personal observation is exactly what it sounds like, where you go and you watch. Maybe you want to know, do people like our hot dogs? So a very easy way to do it is to step outside your office, watch people go and buy hot dogs, watch them as they take the first bites, and hear their comments. Focus group, ask them questions. Surveys and questionnaires, you can do it on site. You can do that at your arena. Very cheap, very easy. You're right there. One thing that you need to realize when you question all these different techniques, who are you talking to? If you're asking questions at your baseball stadium, you are only getting people who decided to go to the baseball game. If you ask questions like what makes you decide to go more often, or why don't you go to a lot of games, you're probably not getting a lot of people that don't, or at least a lot of people who feel negatively towards your organization. If you want to get those people, you can go through a community intercept or go somewhere else and ask those questions. You can do it via telephone, website, email. All great ways, all have pros and cons to it. Questionnaires are very easy, and most of the time they're very inexpensive, especially to do a website or an email. However, think about how many emails that you get for surveys and how many you actually fill out. We can do video and personal interviews. Whether you identify yourself or not is up to you. You can get a panel of experts. You can do a mystery fan or a mystery shop where you portray yourself as just a regular person going to a stadium, and you buy your ticket and you go to sit your seat and you have your hot dogs and you collect a lot of information as if a typical fan were experiencing it. Some different data that we need to collect. One is general market. What's the size of our audience? What are the demographics? Age, income, gender, perhaps. What are the purchase behaviors and consumption patterns of those? Do people buy new equipment every single year? When do they buy ski equipment? If we have a Dick's Sporting Goods and we have a limited number of shelves, we want to put ski equipment in there and sell a lot of it. When do we start putting it up? When do we take it down? When do we switch to fishing or summer sport? What level of spectatorship or participation is sport broken down by demographic categories? What does the future look like? All of this general data market information we need to find through secondary sources. We can collect this information. You should be collecting this information to support your decisions. Collect information and keep it on past, present, and future customers. Typically, organizations do a very poor job of keeping the information on past people. I know a lot of times we may have a club event, like a golf tournament, and we don't do a good job of keeping that information of people who played not just last year, but 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Maybe we reach out to them to see if they want to play this year. Maybe they didn't play last year. Maybe they had a conflict for that weekend and they couldn't do it. Maybe they had a wedding. Maybe they had a temporary employment struggle. Something happened that weekend. If we don't collect the information from 2, 3, 5 years and find out, can we reach out to them again, then we're missing a great opportunity. Here is a list of people that bought our product at least once. Let's collect that information and try to sell that to them again. As we'll look at a little bit later, it is much easier to sell to a person who's already bought our product, or at least a competitor product, than it is to get somebody to buy for the first time. Other information: frequency of purchase or attendance, use of product type. How do they use the product? Think about that. If we want to focus our attention on making a sale, Do we want to try to focus our energies on somebody who went to 3 or 4 games last year and try to get them to 6 or 7 games? Or do we want to focus on someone who's never been to a game and try to get them to 1? It's much easier for us and much better use of our time to get people who already consumed to try to get them to consume more. Revenue equals markets times consumption. Increase revenue, we can do that by getting more people to buy once or the same people to buy more. Maybe it's more effective for us to get people to buy more. What media is used? How do they get their information? If we know this, then we can put our advertising on that method. If people don't look at Facebook or if they don't adjust and react to Twitter, then we should not use those social media platforms in order to connect to the consumer. We want to find data on our customers, on our competitors. What do they sell? What are their prices? What are their strategies? How do we compare to them in the minds of our consumers? What do they think about them when they compare us? Are we more of a premium brand? Are we less of a quality? Do we too pricey or not pricey enough? How do people think about us when they compare us to the competitors? What brand image do we have when we compare our brand image to the competitors? Then we look at the actual instrument itself. If we want to do a questionnaire, this is scientific. We want to look at specific ways that we create that questionnaire. How do we design it? Do we want open-ended questions or closed-ended? Do we want to do a Likert scale or do we want to talk to people? If we do a closed-ended or quantitative, more of a survey, we can hand out a lot more. It takes a lot less time, a lot less money. If it's open-ended, we now need either to have somebody ask questions and record it, or at least provide an opportunity for the respondent to type in or to record their answers. We would have more costs on the back end of analyzing that. What's the wording of the questions? We don't want the questions to be too lengthy. We don't want to bore people. We don't want it to be ambiguous. We don't want it to offend anybody. We don't want the question to be vague or too technical. We don't want people to look at a question and not understand it because A, the question won't be answered, or B, it'll be answered, but they're making assumptions of what you want. We want to determine the sequence of the survey. We want to begin with broad questions, interesting questions to capture their attention, and then move down into a more focus. We want to ask questions at the beginning that give us the best information that we need. If we need to get information specifically on do people like the hot dogs, let's ask those questions first because we know that people begin questionnaires and oftentimes they do not finish it. If they're only going to finish half of the questionnaires, let's get them to finish the information we need most. If we can, let's put the demographic information at the back if that's not the most important thing we need to know. Because oftentimes demographic information becomes offensive. Not many people want to describe their gender perhaps, or their household income, or their religion, or political views. Once we start asking questions that people don't want to answer, or in fact don't answer, people then have that opportunity in their mind not to answer other questions. So we want to get people very early on answering questions and moving forward. The physical design of the questionnaire, we want it to look simple. We want it to look with a lot of white space. We don't want somebody to look at a document and just have words on it and become overwhelmed. When you look at something like SurveyMonkey, they do a great job with this because they'll put up maybe 5 or 10 questions at a time and group them. So you click through those and then you click save or go on or something along that line. And a new set of questions. So you feel like you've accomplished something. You look at the little bar at the bottom and it says, now I'm 25% done, 50% done, 70. So as a respondent, I'm looking at this and I'm getting encouraged that I'm making progress. If I just have this huge document or if somebody tells me, it's only going to take 10 minutes, I become overwhelmed and bored and I begin thinking, this is taking forever. I'm not accomplishing anything. We want to look at subtests. We want to give a pretest. We want a trial run. We want to hand this out and find out from people what the questionnaire is doing for us. Are there questions that are difficult to answer? Are there ones that ask two different questions and we're not quite sure what the meaning is? Does it look overwhelming? What can we do in terms of the context and the content of the questionnaire in order to revise it so we can move forward and actually deliver the questionnaire and get the vital information that we need? We want to design the sample. Who are we going to ask? If you remember back to your statistics class with your sampling numbers, how confident do I need to be with this? Do I need to be 100% confident in this information? If I need to be 100% confident, I need to ask every single person in my target audience. If I need to be 100% confident with asking a question about our class, I would need to get every single person to give some information. If I need to be 95% or 90% confident, obviously my sampling numbers goes down dramatically. How many people do I need to survey to be accurate? Then I look at reliability. How dependable are my findings? Can I be reliable on this information? We did a survey for GMR. We were working with a company that did cruises leaving Florida. And they wanted us to collect information about how many people in different cities actually vacationed in Florida during the past 12 months. The idea is people are indicating that they're going to Florida for vacation. They may be more inclined to go to Florida and take this cruise, do something different. Maybe this year we're not going to go to Disney. This year we'll go take a cruise. We found, and we wanted to collect this information so that we can target specific cities in order to communicate our cruise line to them. So if we find two different cities and they're about the same population, about the same demographic, everything like that, and one has a very high number of people who visit Florida last year for a vacation and one doesn't, we'd want to advertise in the one that went there because they're more inclined to go again. So we found a information and we looked at it, and a very high number of people in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. 50% of the population went to Florida in the past 12 months. Should I rely on that? It sounds weird. We needed to analyze that. We found out that only 2 people from Sheboygan were actually interviewed. They were in a different area when we handed out the survey. Of those 2 people, one of them went to Florida. So we would need to really analyze that information to see if it's reliable before we decided to spend a lot of money advertising Sheboygan. I'm not sure. Maybe a lot of people from Sheboygan did go to Florida. Maybe they didn't. We need the research to support the decision to spend our money there. And at that point, it wasn't very reliable. Randomness. Do we need to be random? Think about if we give out questions concerning an athletic team or going to play, going to watch an athletic team, like going to the football game. Where on campus we distribute our information may really lead to the idea of randomness. If we hand out our survey around a gymnasium or near a physical education or in a sport management department, we're now looking at people who are more predisposed to sport as opposed perhaps to an education or maybe an art college. So if we hand it out to people in one location, we're going to get more people inclined to go to the games. If we hand out somewhere else, less inclined. We're not getting a real random survey. If we're looking for random access, maybe if we want a random, we go to a student life center or a cafeteria that would have a general mix of people. We want to evaluate, is the data lying to us? This is why we want to collect as much different sources of data. Some may say one thing, others may say something else. So we need to compare and contrast and really get information to find out what it's truly saying to us. Then we want to prepare the final report. We want to collect this information, we want to interpret it, and then we want to give it to other people. We got to know our audience. Is our audience, do they understand technology and science words or marketing terms? If they don't, if you're doing something computer based and you're delivering to a person that doesn't understand computer terms, you would need to translate it into the language that they want to hear. For example, non-computerese. We've all been in different situations where people are talking in very specific lingo and jargon in an area that we may not understand. If we're collecting the data and we want people to understand what our interpretations are and our analysis of it, we need to make sure that they understand the words we're using. We want to be thorough but not overwhelming. We want to carefully interpret the findings and recommend specific courses of action. I hope this presentation helps you. Thank you.